Hello, Garland Nixon here. And after the Iran's strike on Israel, which seems, let's face it, it's somewhat staged, somewhat not. But at any rate, let's talk about how things have changed. Things have definitely changed. And of course, the U.S. empire, they're in two more wars. That means they lose two more wars. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here. If you give me a second, I'm having a little trouble streaming to Rumble. So give me a second. I don't know why I'm having trouble streaming to Rumble. Boo, 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 boo. Everything seems to be fine. Details. I'm trying to stream to Rumble and it just doesn't seem to be working. So, okay, it is what it is. I guess this one's not going to Rumble, it looks like. In fact, I had it. You know what? It's just not going to go to Rumble. I'll try to upload it later. All right. I guess it's not going to Rumble. Anyway, so much for that. It is what it is. So we're everywhere but Rumble. So maybe I can upload this later. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about what's happening. Enough of this tomfoolery and silliness about which stream I'm go streaming to. Let's talk about the Iran strike. Let's talk about that, the whole thing in the context of Israel and Ukraine. And I think it's important to me. I'm going to talk about both, but if you think about it, these two wars can be viewed through a single context, and that is the U.S. empire is contracting, right? Empires, if you think about this, right? A person, right? What happens? You're born and you get bigger and bigger and bigger. You expand, and as you get older, what happens? You shrink, you contract, you get smaller, and then you croak, right? Think of a leaf; it expands out. And then eventually it contracts, it dries up, and then it's gone. That's the way things work, right? A sun, it gets bigger and it grows and blah, blah, blah. And then it gets weaker. Actually, a sun kind of grows and blows. But that maybe suns don't work. Forget it. Never mind with stars. But you get my point, right? The U.S. an empire goes and takes more land, more property, more countries, occupies them, takes their resources, does all this stuff, and then it gets smaller and smaller, and then it maybe ends up being just the home state, or things get rearranged, but it's no longer dominant, right? So the U.S. was expanding. It's taking countries here. Oh, it's going to take Puerto Rico, and it's going to take the Sandwich Islands and turn them into Hawaii. It's going to continue taking all this stuff. And then at some point, it's like, hey, I'm going to take Syria. And the Russians are like, yeah, I think you're not. The Russians got big enough and strong enough to stop us from taking Syria, right? To stop the empire from expanding. And I would argue that the empire started contracting at that point, right? An empire does not stay the same. It either expands or contracts. And the empire starts contracting. And once an empire starts contracting, the dynamics are there. It's done, right? It's going to contract down to like the UK, right? Which the UK is still contracting, still getting weaker and weaker and weaker, because it doesn't realize that it's not an empire anymore. But at any rate, so the US has what? We're going to expand to the border of Russia. 2014, right? We're going to expand, right? We're talking about NATO expansion. We're going to expand to the border of Russia. And we're going to take Ukraine on Russia's border. We're going to expand right up to their border. Think about what's happening in the Middle East. All the country we've overthrown. We've overthrown Iraq, and we have bases there, which means we now control Iraq. We overthrow Iran, Afghanistan. Now we're going to take, we got bases there. We control Afghanistan, right? We're going to overthrow Syria. That we had to contract. Now, when we had to give up Afghanistan, again, what's happening? We're contracting. This is about the empire contracting. Now, Russia, said you're going to contract in Syria. You're getting out of there. You're not going to have it. You're not going to overthrow the government. You're not going to take it. You're going to get smaller. Ukraine, Russia says, we'll fight to keep you out. And see, part of it too is this, part of the new dynamic is countries that are willing to fight the empire to keep the empire from expanding, to keep the empire from getting more powerful, to weaken the empire, right? Russia was willing to say, look, I know you don't want to fight me straight up because I know that's not what you do. And I understand that the US empire can't fight straight up, really. They can't really fight countries straight up per se, for the most part, for this reason. 2003, whatever it was, when they invaded Iraq, right? It's like, okay, we got 9/11. Now we're going to use our troops and we're going to go in and we're going to use knuckle drag and brute force. And we're not going to do CIA overthrows of countries and underhanded undermining of countries and things like that to take countries. We're going to use brute force. We're going to send our troops in and we're going to pound them and we're going to take them, right? But what they found out is the US is critical that you keep the people at home from pushing back, and you keep them from knowing that you're an empire, and empires can take a beating and lose a lot of troops. Well, when 2003, the invasion of Iraq, and a lot of bodies started coming home, the American people started to say, wait a minute, we can't handle this. We don't like this. We don't want to lose troops. And the rulers of the empire realized, okay, we got to do proxy stuff, and we got to do use underhanded tricks, because we can't just use brute force, because the body bags will come home and American people won't have that. So we'll do all this proxy stuff and all, but we can't actually go head to head, toe to toe with people, because the American people ain't going to buy into it. Okay. Well, now look what they're doing. Look where they are now. After all of that, trying to contract, trying to expand, starting to contract, and now the empire realizing that it has challenges. It has Russia, it has Iran, it has countries around the world, China starting to push up against it, starting to grow, starting to get more powerful. They said, okay, we got to execute Plan X, right? As Maxwell Smart used to say. Plan X is going to be numero uno. We're going to take Russia and China once and for all. So we got to do our massive proxy war. This is going to be the big one. We'll build up the most powerful proxy war ever on Russia's border. We'll take Russia down and then move on to China. That's done. A piece of cake, gravy. We got Ukraine all filled up with weapons. Everything we got NATO on our, basically under control. All of our European countries, we got vassals completely installed. We have a ruling elite in Europe that'll do anything with it we want. We're set to do that. And meanwhile, and think about this. I think it was September or August that Jake Sullivan said the Middle East is like the calm, and I'm paraphrasing, the Middle East is the calmest it's ever been. The Middle East this is it, man. The Middle East is in the best shape. So they looked at it and they said, we got Israel here. Israel's very powerful. We got the Middle East under control. That's cool, calm, and collect. We can focus on taking Russia out. We can focus on going after China, neither was which was going to work, but that was they want to focus on it because we got the area, the Middle East resolved. What they didn't understand is that the people of the Middle East are not of a nature to accept humiliation, degradation, and domination, that they're going to fight back. And so as they're over there, they're like, okay, Middle East is straight here, done, finished, leave that. Israel, just you can bomb some people, harass them, give them a hard time, do whatever you want to. We're going to be over here working our machinations to try to take out Russia and China, and of course, Europe, which was the easy one. They're over here doing this, and Hamas hit them. I mean, punched a hole below the waterline. Okay, so now they got a big problem because, for this reason, Russia and China are about the future. Russia and China are about stopping someone who's rising and growing to be so powerful that they may be more powerful than us in the future, and that they can thwart us from going around the world to Africa, Latin America, stealing all of the resources we need and all that. So now we've got competition. So we can focus on stopping that competition. Israel's critical because it's about maintaining a like a hegemonic presence, a dominant military presence in the Middle East, the lifeblood of industry worldwide is oil. And we got to maintain a dominant military presence in the oil-rich region of the world. That's why Alexander Haig said Israel is the U.S.'s unsinkable aircraft carrier. JFK Jr. said the same thing, unsinkable aircraft carrier. And the aircraft carrier is used to project power. The U.S. clearly articulated on numerous occasions that Israel's principal mission was to protect power from the U.S. in that region. Joe Biden said, I mean, what do they have to tell people before they get it? Joe Biden said, if Israel didn't exist, we'd have to create it to address our interest in the region. When Alexander Haig says it is our unsinkable aircraft carrier, the metaphor is we use this to project military power in the region. When Joe Biden says, if it didn't exist, we'd have to create it to address our interest in the region. What more do they have to tell you to make it clear that this is about projecting U.S. power in the oil-rich region of the world? That's what it's all about. Now, there's a lot of dynamics with Zionism, with very powerful billionaire Zionists who have power. So with Israeli lobbyists playing the game in the U.S. really, really well so that they could buy out our Congress. But all that's true. And some of the dynamics of Israel may have shifted, but let's not forget the intent of the U.S. empire for Israel. The intent, as they have clearly stated on numerous occasions, is to have a military presence to address their interest in the regions and to project military power in the region. That's it. As I said, notwithstanding all the other dynamics of Zionism and Zionism's ability to infect the host. You know what I mean? Don't forget, if you got a parasite, the parasite lives off the host. The parasite infects the host. The parasite hurts and harms the host. A good parasite never hurts the host. Bad parasite kills the host, right? So what's going on now? The U.S. understands something, particularly the Biden administration, because it's an election year. And this is critical. This is a critical factor when it comes to the Israeli issue. Critical factor. And that is this. If you're not in America, in the U.S., you don't understand Americans and their cars, right? Americans and their cars, cars and Americans, right? And not just cars, as in America, cars is not just something you drive around, right? It is a portrayal of who you are, you know, what kind of car. All Americans, or like a lot of countries, people want cars just to get from point A to B. Americans want a car to project who they are. Maybe if it's a young guy, to pick up girls. Maybe if it's a guy with lots of friends, to show the other guys are cool. Look how cool I am. I have this kind of car. It doesn't have to be a new car, just a cool, could be old. I have a lot of friends who take like cars from the 60s and 70s. And they build them and they redo them until they're like, you know, until they're like replicas, you know, like new, near my house. And there are places all over America where you can go. And this is, I mean, nowhere from here. I can go to any number of them. Old car shows, where on a Saturday evening, you go to this parking lot and there's these gorgeous old cars from the 60s and 70s, some 50s, some older than that, all kind of custom cars. That's part of it's Americana. That's the iconography of America, is cars, old cars, cool cars, muscle cars, you name it, right? Okay. Americans don't like high gas mileage. Don't like it. If you want to lose an election, high gas prices. If you want to lose an election quick, crank up the gas prices. There's a reason. Most Americans know this. Most Americans know this. And that is that traditionally, gas prices go down just before the election, because whoever's in office wants their party, the incumbent party wants to win, and they know low gas prices helps them win. Now, why do I say all of that? Because what we're dealing with is a political paradox, right? Whereas if the U.S. supports Israel to do whatever it wants, if the Biden administration supports Israel to do whatever it wants in the Middle East, and in the Middle East is where Israel exists to address our interests, our unsinkable aircraft carrier, that metaphor, right? So Israel's there to help us control the oil. We can control all kinds of the lifeblood of industry, right? Israel's there to project our military power and domination in that region, right? But if Israel runs amok and destabilizes the region, gas prices and oil prices will go through the roof, and the Biden administration will surely lose. No question about it. If Israel starts a war, something really bad in there, right? What's happening? Let's say Iran says we're shutting down the Straits of Hormuz. Even if they don't, if there's a war, there's missiles flying all over the place, all kind of madness. What happens? We've discussed this before. The shipping insurance companies either say ships you can't go there, or you're going to have to pay a premium if you go in the area. All kind of terrible things happen. The Red Sea could get shut down. The Straits of Hormuz could get shut down. Even if those things don't happen, speculators will drive prices through the roof, and now Americans are paying a ton, right? So this terrible paradox that the Biden administration finds itself in is that the country, the unsinkable aircraft carrier there that is there to help us control the region and at times create chaos and destabilize the region, is now acting in a manner that could destabilize oil prices to a point where it guarantees a loss to the Biden administration. So the Biden administration is in a mess, and the U.S. is in a mess. They did, and might I add this, and potentially wipe out our economy. Potentially. What happens there? It goes bad, and now some oil infrastructure starts getting blown up. What happens if a nasty war starts that can't be stopped easily, and ships can't get in and out? What's going to happen to Europe's and the U.S. and Europe? Like, we're not buying gas and oil and stuff like that from Russia. What happens to them? Can I add one other thing? And if, think about this. For all of that, you got to add in Russia and Ukraine. If, in fact, Israel was to react in a way that inflames the region, right? And now the Straits of Hormuz and different places like that are closed, and the oil supply is dramatically interrupted coming out of the Middle East, right? The energy, Qatar does a tremendous amount of gas. And might I add, a lot of the African countries, their gas it's going through the Middle East. It's going through either a lot of times, a lot of the African countries, it's going through areas that are adjacent to the Middle East, right? So now there's going to be a massive disruption in gas and in oil going to the U.S., going everywhere, right? What does Russia sell? So if this happens, though Russia does not want it to happen, Russia will be the only game in town. Russia, the price of gas and oil will go through the freaking roof, and Russia will be able to sell all the gas and oil they can probably pump 3 times over for the highest price they could ever imagine selling it. So what it will do, it would enrich Russia in a way that that is unimaginable, right? They're the only game in town. Now there ain't much coming out of oil, out of the Middle East. There's a big disruption coming out of Africa, and Russia is loaded to the gills with oil and with gas. So now there's a big jam that you're in, because if you really want to get it, now you got to go back to Russia to get some, number one. And if you don't, China and everybody else is buying it from Russia, and you ain't getting it. Your economy crashes. The derivatives market probably collapses, because, derivatives, credit default swaps, right? What happens? All of these traders that have bought oil futures, judging on whether they'll go up, all that crap collapses. All of these traders that had bought credit default swaps, right? They bought insurance on their trades. So now I go and buy a trade, and I say, I'm going to make money off that trade, but I'm going to buy insurance off that trade, a credit default swap. So that if that trade doesn't make money, I can go to my insurance company, boom, and I can get money get it from the insurance company. But all that crap collapses. That, keep in mind, it's like this. It's like, think about this. A company sells life insurance to all of these people, right? Think about this. So let's say this company is worth, I don't know, $10 billion, right? But they've sold $500 billion in life insurance because all the people aren't going to die at the same time. They'll pay off one here, one there. They'll invest the money. They'll make money. They can handle it, right? But what would happen if everybody died at the same time? The company's only worth $10 billion and they sold $500 billion in life insurance. If they only got the worth 10, they couldn't pay it off. The reason they can pay it off is because everybody doesn't die at the same time. They have actuaries that sit there and they figure based on this or that, how soon, who's going to die based on what age. But what if everybody died at the same time? They couldn't pay it off, right? They only got $10 billion in liquid assets and they owe $500 billion, right? Credit default swaps. What happens if all of these companies that bought insurance on their oil futures trades and their oil money and all this they were going to make, all at the same time, go to the insurance company and say, well, because of the war, all of our stuff went bad. Can you pay off? And the insurance company now has $3 trillion in derivatives. Let's change it. 50, 60, $100 trillion. 100 trillion, 60 trillion, 50 trillion, quadrillions of dollars. Realistically, unthinkable, unimaginable amounts of money that they have to pay off. Well, guess what? They can't pay it off. And guess what? The United States can't even print that much. Can't print it. We can't pay it off. And so this gigantic derivatives market collapses. That's the kind of economic collapse we're looking at if Israel draws Iran and the US into some war in the Middle East. It is economic collapse. It'll make 1929 look like the roaring 20s, right? Look like the 90s. Great. Oh boy, the economy's rolling. No, we're done. We're toast. We're finished. So the Biden administration understands this. They understand that if Israel turns this thing into a mess, first of all, before we even get there, any prayer of Joe Biden winning anything is over. In fact, the Democrats they're probably set to get crushed anyway. But Joe Biden, Blinken, and those people, there's a reason that Blinken et al. Is all like, Israel, please don't do that. They're in an election year. They know that if people wake up tomorrow and gas is $15, $20 a gallon, they're done. That's the only thing Americans will know. Oh my God, what are we doing? Yeah, we've got to stand for Israel. Yeah, trust me, 10, 15 bucks a gallon, Americans ain't going to be for standing for Israel. Right. Let's look at an article here in Haaretz, because this is an Israeli newspaper. Okay, here we go. Biden's message to Israel after Iran attack: quit while you're ahead. Blinken speaks with Jordanian, Saudi, Turkish, and Egyptian foreign ministers, reiterates U.S. isn't seeking escalation, right? U.S. to explore measures to hold Iran accountable at the UN. That's for Israeli consumption, right? So what's going on? We see, and I believe it. I believe that Blinken and Biden are like, we don't want an escalation. And if they had their way, would they love to go to war with Iran? Certainly, but they understand what you and I understand, that if they disrupt the flow of oil, that the election is over, there's no point in having a vote. That if people wake up and it's $10 a gallon, people wake up and it's $7 a gallon. But God knows if they wake up and it's 17 a gallon, the economy crashes. I mean, think about this. Diesel fuel's $15 a gallon. All of a sudden, people go to the market tomorrow and a dozen eggs are $20. I mean, you got basically hyperinflation. Americans are going to go bananas. And Trump is going to go, they are destroying this country, and I wouldn't destroy the country, and put me back in, and I'll get them all back down, and I'll bring peace and blah, blah, blah. Biden and those guys understand they can't, right? Now, let me add this. So that's important to think about. What does Biden and Blinken et al. Do they want it to escalate? They do, but they understand that if it does, they're done, finished politically. So they would love to do it because they're warmongers, but they also understand they can't do that. That's not an option for them. Now, let me add something else. Let's talk about Israel. This changes the dynamics for Israel. Now, think about this. Israel has pretty brazenly attacked Iran for a while, right? Let me find something. Watch this. Let me give you an example. Let's look at this. It's important. Let me just give you one example. So this is from February 24, right? 2 months ago. Israel was behind attacks on major gas pipeline in Iran. The sabotage was, analysts say, marked an escalation in the shadow war between Israel and Iran, caused sweeping disruption in several provinces. Okay, so Israel would do stuff like that. They would murder a Iranian scientist. They would blow up their pipelines. They would launch cyber attacks. They would just do stuff to Iran brazenly, like, ha, 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 we know Iran doesn't want to really, go any further than that. The United States has our back. We want to try to drag both Iran and U.S. into a war. So they would do all kinds of stuff to Iran, and Iran was reticent to respond militarily because they didn't want an expansion of things, and they kind of figured the U.S. is 100% behind them. And the U.S., they felt Iran and the U.S. were trying to drag them into a war, and they might have been. I don't know, but now Trump's around, and Trump's screaming at the top of his lungs, "None of these things would have happened if I was president." And from the looks of things, he may soon be. We're a year out from that, right? Let's face it. Let's see, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, 7 months, 8 months out, right? 7.5 months out. So you best believe that Biden and those guys and his team are here in Trump's footsteps. So one of the things that changes, I think, now is this. Israel has to be much more wary. Israel just can't, they crossed a line. And actually, in a way, I'll say this. I think Iran has wanted to punch back, but they were looking for the right opportunity. And what Israel did was so brazenly in violation of international law that it gave them the moral high ground enough that they could punch back. So then Iran's like, we're going to punch back. Now, they got some messages out of this because the U.S. came to the table. Whoa, everything that I read leads me to believe that the U.S. came to the table. Whoa, not so fast there, Speedy. Slow up. We got to inject ourselves into this mix. We know you're going to punch back. We got to try to work something out where you punch back, but this thing doesn't get out of hand, right? They couldn't come out and say, because if it does, we're surely going to lose to freaking Trump. But that's a reality. I think that was a big consideration, right? So now I think this was somewhat negotiated. Right. And I think Iran was like, look, yeah, we'll work with you. We don't want an escalation. You don't want an escalation. But these idiots are getting out of hand, and we're not going to let them keep doing this. They're blowing up our pipelines. They're killing our scientists. Now they're just attacking us at will. Screw this. We're punching back. And I think the U.S. at some point, the U.S. came to the realization that Iran was going to punch back. And if Iran's going to punch back, they got to try to mitigate this thing so that it doesn't wipe out our economy and wipe out Europe's economies. Because let's face it, I don't know if you looked recently, something you might want to know about Europe. Let me find it. And this is important to understand. And don't think that the Biden administration doesn't understand this also. And I've gone over this. If you've been watching my channel, you've seen this stuff before. Look at this. Olaf Scholz, 73% disapproval rating. Macron, 71% disapproval rating, right? And you could go on down. Trudeau, 59%. Alexander Crew, Belgium, 46%. They understand that if the economy in the U.S. and the economy in Europe collapses, which it will as a result of the whole Ukraine thing, that not only of the Biden team, but all of their partners in crime are done too. That a lot of these other governments will fall. That Scholz and Macron, Sunak, those three governments. Look at that. Sunak, 66% disapproval rating. Macron, 71. Scholz, 73. Those governments will fall. and Biden's won't be long behind it. So they're in desperation. They're evil. They're neocons. They love war and all kind of terrible things, but they are in desperation, understanding a reality now that they're teetering on the edge of a pin. And of course, we haven't even got to Ukraine yet. Okay, so the Biden administration was in a position where they had to do the best they can. They did everything they could to mitigate it. I think Iran wanted to demonstrate, number one, that they had a red line, that at some point you got to have a red line. And when a red line comes, you got to hit back. I think they also wanted to demonstrate some of their technological prowess. I also think they wanted to demonstrate to their populace and to the people that are supporting them with the whole Gaza conflict that they are the lead people, that they are the moral leaders of the resistance, and that as the moral leaders, that they were not afraid to punch the U.S. and punch Israel and punch, so they were very, very effective. Even though, as I said, I think some of it was somewhat staged, but they were still able. They were still able to show that they could project power. And I also think that they were also able to send some messages to the U.S. and Israel, right, to say, look, we could we could send out a couple hundred drones in the blink of an eye. And, excuse me, we got missiles, some nasty missiles that you can't stop. Remember, this was just a demonstration of our power, nothing more. We negotiated, nobody had to get hurt. Imagine if we didn't tell you these missiles were coming. Imagine if you had no clue. If we woke up one day and said, we're going to start throwing missiles at you, what would you do then? And our allies. So let's, keep in the back of your head that if you go too far and push this thing and we do get involved in a broader war, that you're going to take some nasty hits. It ain't going to be pretty. Okay. So now the big thing I get out of it is this. Israel has to be really wary. Israel's dancing on the head of a pin, right? Israel has to be wary because they're like, okay, we hit Iran and Iran hit back. So now, can we continue what we're doing before? Can we go in and blow up their pipelines? Can we go in and do terrorist attacks like we were doing and blame it on ISIS-K? Can we continue to attack Syria? They got to ask themselves, can we continue to do the things that we were doing and get away with it? And meanwhile, the U.S. has to look at it and say, yeah, can we just carte blanche continue to support Israel with everything they do? Because now it's clear with what happened with Iran, they're putting us in big danger. Israel is a tremendous liability right now to the U.S. empire. Don't get me wrong. They do not want to give up their unsinkable aircraft carrier. In fact, not only don't want to, they can't give up their unsinkable aircraft carrier in the region of the world with all of that oil. But they're in a jam because that unsinkable aircraft carrier has gotten out of control. I could really compare this to the Nazis. Let's not forget. Again, I got a book right here. Conjuring Hitler, right? How Britain and America made the Third Reich. Let's not forget. It's not the first time they've had this this problem. The Western powers created Hitler, created the Nazi war machine so they could use it to attack it was the first Ukraine. Realistically, it was the first iteration of Ukraine was Nazi Germany. We're going to create a Nazi state, a fascist state, and we're going to unleash that fascist state on the Soviet Union. The problem is that fascist state got out of hand and they couldn't control it. And it was going to wreck everything that they had, right? Okay. Same with Europe. Israel. They have created, the empire has created the U.S. and its vassals in Europe have created this fascist state to control the Middle East. And this fascist state has gotten out of hand. That's what happens when you create a fascist state. You do not have a guard. I've said this before. That's the difference between having a guard dog and a mad dog. A guard dog is trained. A guard dog will do what it's told. A guard dog will protect its master. That's what it's trained to. A guard dog is not trained to protect itself. A lot of times, guard dogs, you walk over, kick at a guard dog, wham, off he runs. You come after guard dog's master, he'll tear you to shreds. He'll give his life fighting for his master. That's what he's trained for. And unfortunately, I know a whole lot of people who are Democrats and Republicans who are nothing but guard dogs who'll give their lives fighting for their masters, even though their masters will do nothing for them. But at any rate, a mad dog is frothing at the mouth. It's going to bite anybody around. It's going to tear anything around it to shreds. It's going to go mad. That's what happens when you create a fascist state. It's a mad dog. And they've created in Israel a mad dog. And it can't be controlled. And it'll just as soon bite their leg as it would bite the Iranians' leg. Don't care about it. Israel doesn't care anymore about Biden, about U.S. politics, about the United States. Care more about it than it does about the Iranians. It means nothing to it. They got another mad dog. They created another fascist state. And Ukraine's the same way. Ukraine's a fascist state. And I wouldn't be shocked if Victoria Nuland worked with the intelligence group, the intelligence agencies in Ukraine to do the Crocus attack, and that Biden and his team didn't know about it or fired her because they found out. I wouldn't be shocked at all, because Ukraine's, guess what? You got two mad dogs. They're acting in a way that's detrimental to you. It wouldn't shock me. I don't know the dynamics on that, but I wouldn't be shocked, because Ukraine is also a mad dog. It's the same as Nazi Germany, with literal Nazis. And let's face it, to use the Nazi Germany, let me put it this way. I wouldn't be the first person to use the metaphor of Nazi Germany in referring to Israel. I wouldn't be the only person out here who would be using that metaphor were I to use that metaphor. Not saying that I am, but were I to use it, I wouldn't be the only person out there using it. Isn't that true? We all know that, right? So they've created these two Nazi states to go after their enemies, or in one case to subdue the entire region and control the entire region. And now they're both trouble. Now they're both big trouble. And what we have, I think, right now is, so we've got an Israel that the U.S. has made it clear, I do not want you to hit back. You were out of line striking Iran. You put us in a bad spot. Now we were able to mitigate and negotiate Iran's reprisal. And let's just leave it there. Let's chill out, man. You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me, right? So now the question is, will Israel do that? Maybe, but I don't think so. Because of internal politics in Israel, number one, they're mad dogs. And number two, because what they've created is religious fanatics. And religious fanatics aren't rational. And Israel is a pure parasite when it comes to the U.S. It is a parasite. I read that Israel's that one attack by Iran cost Israel, right? It didn't cost Israel stinking dime. It cost $1.3 billion, right? So let's face it. If Israel was to get in a war with Iran, can the U.S. afford $1 billion a day, or maybe even more? Right? Extremely expensive. It's easy for Israel to do that. What do they care? What's $1.3 billion? It ain't their money. Kind of reminds me, you might have heard me joke about my daughter when she was 15, who has me wrapped around her little finger, right? And one day I saw an advertisement for MAC makeup, and I walked in and I said, "Hey, you know anything about MAC makeup?" She said, "Sure, it's all I use." And I said, "Isn't that kind of expensive?" I saw that it's sold at one of these expensive stores. I forgot which one it is, right? I said, "It's sold at whatever blah blah store." And she says, "Yeah, what do I care? It's your money," right? She didn't. What did she care? I'm buying it. I'm paying for it. What do I care? It's yours. She literally said that. It just went on about her way. And I kind of looked for a second and I thought, yeah, I guess I kind of am, a schmuck here. And she's got me wrapped around her little finger. So I just shut up and went back and watched TV because I know I wasn't going to do anything about it, right? There we go. 1.3 billion. There we go. Israel is my daughter and the United States is me. At that time that she was 15, quite a while ago. But that was it. That's the metaphor. The $1.3 billion. Hey, Israel, it costs $1.3 billion to fight back against drones and missiles. Isn't that a lot of money? You know what Israel say? Well, I care. You idiots are paying the tax dollars. It's your infrastructure that I'm spending. It's your health care that I'm spending. It's your schools that I'm spending. What do I care? We got free health care. Oh, by the way, thanks, idiots. We got nice schools. We got free college. We got all the things that you wish you had. Yeah, we got them. And you know why we got them? Because you pay for them, you freaking idiots. Thank you. Shut up now and send us some more money and weapons. We got people. We got a genocide here. That's the bottom line. That's Israel's position. What do they care? It's our money. I got to work hard to pay taxes for Israel. All the Americans, we work hard to pay taxes so that Israel can give us the finger and say, go jump in a lake. We ain't listening to you. We'll do whatever we want. And we'll create a dynamic where it costs $1.3 billion for one evening. And we'll just laugh and say, well, so what? Iran has said, I'll hit back harder if you do it again. And Israel's like, so what? It costs $1.3 billion. Maybe it'll cost $2.6 billion. But we're spending free money, bro. We are spending free money. So go ahead. What do we care if it costs $3.9 billion? You think we care? It ain't our money. So what? They're like Zelensky's over there. Give me another 60 billion, dude. I mean, it's free money. You know, that's bottom line. It's free money. They're both. We built a couple of fascist states. We spoiled them. And they expect free money. I'm just starting to realize something. I think I've been had by my daughter. But that's not important right now. At least she's nice to me, okay? And she turned out okay. At least she didn't go out and commit a genocide, for God's sake. But at any rate, but you get my point. We're being had. Taken apart. And it's Joe Biden's job to make sure that our money all goes to Israel and Ukraine. And, you know, a perfect number. The Biden team came out the other day and they said, we're spending $60 million. We have earmarked $60 million to rebuild the bridge, which is 12 minutes from my house. $60 million we've earmarked to rebuild the Key Bridge, right? And we need $60 billion for Ukraine. Exactly to the penny, 1,000 times more to go to Zelensky and the Nazis than to help build our infrastructure. That's the Biden thing. You don't give a crap. You think our boy Netanyahu gives a crap about where that money's coming from? He doesn't have to. He doesn't have to care. It's free money. It's nice. I wish we all wish we could live off of free money, huh? Sweet. But at any rate, so at this point, and let me add this, Israel kind of can't admit it, but they know the war's lost. Let's talk about that. And we'll add in Ukraine. Those wars are lost. The neocons, what do? They lose wars. They're really good at losing wars. I mean, war after war after war, they lose. And then they say, we've got the greatest military, the most powerful military in the world. Can you imagine that? I'll go back to this. Bill Parcells, his nickname was the Tuna. He was a great football coach. He won, I think, 2 Super Bowls, right? He was a winner. He won every year. He was a quality coach. Always had a good team, right? And then he left and he went to the Giants, I believe it was. Left the New York Giants and he went to the Jets. And they put all of these stars on the team and everybody expected them to win because they had a bunch of stars and they weren't winning. And they went to Tuna, who was great, but a guy was just great with his one-liners. And they said, you know, I don't understand. You've got this great team and you're not winning. He says, we're not a great team. What do you mean? You've got this guy, that guy. You got all these great players. And he says, and you've got a great team. And he said, you are what your record says you are. Our record says we're not a great team, right? Okay. The United States says we have the greatest military in the world, the greatest, most powerful military, the greatest military in history. Militarily, we are what our record says we are. We got stalemated in Korea, probably lost. And then need I go from war to war to war? We lose them all. So we are what our record says we are. Our record says our military loses wars. So we don't have a great military. And now we got 2 wars going based on our history, right? History is the best predictor of the future. Based on Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, you name it, it's easy to project the outcome of both of those wars. An L. We're going to lose both of them, and they're both already lost. They're lost. We went after Russia economically. Ask the Europeans how that's going. Ask the average American how our economic war against whoever is going on, right? That's done. We went after them diplomatically. How's that working out? They're better off with the Chinese. Everybody wants to join BRICS. Everybody. There's 40 countries that want to join BRICS right now. So you got BRICS plus and 40 more. Before you know it, every country in the world, with the exception of the U.S. and its schlamazily hangers on, are going to be members of BRICS. Everybody can see the way things are going. Economically, we lost it. Diplomatically, we lost it. Militarily, well, that was never going to happen. Militarily now, we've been demilitarized. Hopefully we'll get denazified, to be quite frank. You know, the Europe and the US needs to be denazified, but we're being demilitarized. I think politically, the repercussions will be so dramatic that hopefully we will be denazified, right? Just simply because the political repercussions will be so dramatic from this debacle, from the two debacles, one happening to be a genocide. So we got two more lost wars. Lost. Both of them are already lost. I don't have to go over why Israel is lost. We all know there's no way that they can meet their objectives. Look, what is a war about, right? It's politics, as you've heard this, politics by the means. But here's the bottom line. Whatever you're set out to do, you have objectives. This is what I'd like to do. I'd like to get a degree, a law degree, right? And at some point, you realize, I can't get into law school. I can't pass the LSAT. At some point, that objective is gone. You can't get into law school. You're not going to be a lawyer. You're not going to get a law degree. Right? Now, can you study and you can take the bar exam without a law? Did you know that? You can study and take the bar exam without a law degree. You can study and take the bar. Anybody. Abraham Lincoln did it. He became a lawyer with no school. So you could technically study on your own and become a lawyer just by passing it. But if your goal is a law degree and you can't get into law school, you're never going to meet that objective, right? So at some point, I can't get into law school. I'll never meet that objective. At that point, I've lost. That doesn't mean I can't become a lawyer, but it doesn't mean that. Yeah, I want to be a police officer, and you get arrested for possession of heroin. Bad news, dude. That objective ain't happening, right? So on and on and on. And so you have to look at some point. Well, they went into the rubble of Beirut, and they've come of Gaza, and they come out of the rubble of Gaza, and Hamas is still there fighting. They're never going to defeat Hamas. Their objective will never be met, which means Israel has lost the war. And internally, it's a disaster. People are in the street. The hostages, that a lot of them ain't coming home. You're not going to strong arm Hamas into doing what you want. Their political entities not going away. What are you going to go? They said we're going to push Hezbollah back to the Litani River. They can't push Hezbollah back, anywhere. Hezbollah still pounding them with missiles. Was pounding them last night. Israel will never meet the objectives that they set for themselves in this military engagement, which means it's lost. Whatever happens, they're not going to meet their initial objectives. All they can do is change the objectives and pretend like they were never there. No, we were never trying to defeat Hamas. We were just trying to clear some space so we could build some houses on the Mediterranean. They can change them, but they've lost the war. And everybody can see what's happening in the Ukraine. Were they ever going to defeat the Red Army? No, they were never going to defeat the Red Army. But keep in mind something. That wasn't the objectives. If we go back to the beginning, that was a later defined objective of the U.S. empire, of NATO. What was the objective? To weaken Russia. Russia's stronger. To isolate Russia. Russia has more friends and everybody wants to join BRICS, and Russia's holding the presidency of the BRICS right now, right? To create regime change in Russia. Vladimir Putin just won with 87% of the vote, and over 70% of the people voted, right? Need I go on? Every single one of their objectives has been thwarted. They have gotten the opposite of what they've wanted. So everything that they tried to do, the only thing they could do is draw Sweden and Finland into NATO and build some bases there and screw over Sweden and Finland and say, ha, ha, ha. They wanted less NATO, but they said, what do you say? Russia wanted less NATO on their border. They got more NATO on their border, but you wanted Ukraine, and they kicked your ass out of Ukraine. They said you can't have Ukraine and you can't have Georgia. You ain't getting Ukraine, you ain't getting Georgia. So you got to try to do other things. But all of your initial objectives have been thwarted by Russia and China combined. Every one of them. And now, since you can't overthrow Putin, since you can't impoverish Russia, since you can't isolate Russia, you've lost the war. All of your objectives. A war is about getting objectives completed. None of them. Zero. In fact, not only do you not complete your objectives, every one of those objectives, you get the opposite of what you wanted. Every one of them. So, 2 more lost wars. That's what Biden's come in. So really, actually, Biden gets a 3 for. He gets the trifecta, right? Think about this. He left Afghanistan in humiliation, which means that one was lost. Right now, he's trying to manage the 2 other losses. You got Macron and people in NATO now. So a few of them saying, "Let's go into Eastern Ukraine. We'll go into Ukraine and help the Ukrainians." And the Russians are saying, "If you do, we'll blow you to hell." And they're saying, "Yeah, we'll go in there." And Macron's like, "Yeah, I think I can come up with 2,000 troops." Literally, the Germans sent in 21 guys sent to the Russian border. Think about this. The Germans just said, we're sending some troops to the Russian border to stand up against Russia and to put up to have a united front and to start building up some people to protect ourselves from Russia and the Saviki Gap and all this kind of crap, right? It's true story. They sent 21 guys. Oh boy, that's going to stop the Russian hordes, right? 21 guys. And they said, and we hope to have 4,800 by 2027. But they've also admitted they don't have the tanks for them. The mighty German army is like a rag doll, which, let's face it, the Brits, they can't get their ships underway. Their subs don't work. Their missiles have been duds recently. They ain't scaring nobody. So realistically, the NATO and the U.S. empire is bogged down in West Asia, in the Middle East. Bogged down. The U.S. empire is bogged down. We got our ships there, aircraft carriers there, the ones that are floating, all this stuff in the Middle East. So the U.S. is bogged down in a war that they can't possibly win in the Middle East. At the same time, their Nazi proxy army in Ukraine has no chance of winning. It's over. They've already lost, basically. We're starting to see larger groups of people surrender. Let me look here. Anything new? And the bottom line is they got nothing. I'm looking for anything. I'm looking. Bottom line is the U.S. has no options anymore. They've got to, when it comes to Ukraine, they've got to funnel all of their weaponry to the Middle East. See, here's the bottom line. If the U.S. looks at Ukraine and the Middle East, and they know they're both going to collapse, and Israel, right? If they got to lose one first, and they're going to lose both, and they're going to lose one first, right? Look, bottom line, they're going to lose them both, but they're going to lose one first. The one that they can lose first, probably, and that's what we're at. I think that is the calculus, and it has to be the calculus of the Biden administration. That is, we only got but so much energy. We only got but so many weapons. We only got but so much stuff, and we got 2 places screaming for it, right? Really 3, because you got all of these crazy neocons who want stuff sent to the China. Oh, by the way, there should be 4. That would be the American people, but they're not part of the equation because the neons don't give a crap about us, right? We're not part. We should be 1A. We should be 1 through 9, and everything else should start at 10. But it ain't the way it works. We're not part of the equation, so we get nothing, right? But as they look at Ukraine and they look at Israel, right? If they lose Ukraine, yeah, it's a debacle, humiliation. NATO starts to crumble, which is already crumbling. But if they lose Israel, and the number one, they lose their power to manipulate things in the Middle East, to manipulate politics in the Middle East. Their vassals start to come unglued and say, man, you guys aren't very powerful at all, and you're jeopardizing us. We bet on the wrong horse, which people are already starting to think. Then they're out of the Middle East, and that's it. Russia and China are 100% in, working with everybody. They're all members of BRICS, and see ya wouldn't want to be you, right? So they've got to look at the calculation and be concerned, because the other part of it is if Israel gets out of hand, if this war gets out of hand, then the U.S. and the Europeans' economy is going to collapse. And they've got to be worried about economic collapse on their watch that will surely be blamed on them. So if they have to look at it and say one of these wars has to end first, it's going to have to be Ukraine. And the idea that these Europeans think that they're going to somehow pick a fight with Russia, and they're going to send in 1,000 troops, and Russia's going to turn them into hamburger meat in about 5 seconds flat, that they're going to send in, and then they're going to say to the U.S., could you divert some of those your military resources away from the Middle East and bring them here? And just to, forget Israel and all that stuff in the Middle East. Don't worry about it. Just bring them all here to Ukraine to confront Russia. It's not happening. If they got to make a choice, which at some point they will, at some point it'll come to a point where they've got to decide. I think we're probably already there, where to focus their resources. It ain't going to be Ukraine. It's over. And and remember my predictions. My prediction is the Ukrainians at some point ain't going to be mad at Russia. The day will come when the Ukrainians will wake up and say, it wasn't Russia that put us in this position. It was you. And let me say this. When you lose a war, people start asking questions that they wouldn't otherwise ask. And when the Ukraine is lost, at least the Germans, and probably more, not the vassals, not the ruling elite. They can't, because they're going to probably be running for their lives to keep from getting their hung. But they'll be hiding in a bunker somewhere. But when this thing in Ukraine falls apart, the German people, certainly a lot of others, but let's start with the German people. Let's go with the German people here. Will ask. We were told that we had to make this sacrifice. We made the sacrifice, and we were told we had to, because if we didn't, the Russians would take the Ukraine, and then they'd take all of Europe, and we'd all be we've been had. We made the sacrifice, and now the threat that you told us existed doesn't exist, and we're all our jobs are gone. We're being deindustrialized. Who the hell blew up Nord Stream anyway? I think I know. That's going to be a discussion. So when the U.S. loses the war in Ukraine, when NATO, which is the U.S., loses the war in Ukraine, all of its vassals are going to start asking some uncomfortable questions. That's sure to happen. But the U.S., even that, they got to, between the two, the U.S. has to lose Ukraine. It can't lose Israel. And the other part of it is this, and this is critical. Ukraine doesn't have its tentacles in U.S. politics. Doesn't. Ukraine's the outside guy. Bunch of Slavs. U.S. hates Slavs. They're happy. They want Russians to die. They want Ukrainians to die. They are nothing but cannon fodder. They are doing their job. The U.S. empire is not going to take one for the team for cannon fodder. You are Slavic people, Ukrainians. They do not see you as their equals. They see you as cannon fodder. Your job is to go out there to kill by Russians and be killed by Russians. Nothing more, nothing less. You are not part of the team. You ain't part of the family. At some point, the Ukrainians will wake up to that reality. And when they don't, they won't be pissed at the Russians. They'll be mad at the U.S. empire. They will not be mad at the Russians. They will be mad at the Europeans. That time is coming, and we're starting to get there soon. All right, let's see where we are. Do we have any stinking super chats? Yes, we do. Let's look at them. We always have great questions with the super chats. Let's go. The Sparkster. Great work, Garland. Thank you, Sparky. Sparkster says, make Israel Syria again. In those Ottoman Empire days, Levant Jews got along fine with their neighbors, whether Muslim, Christian, or otherwise. And you know what? Let me say this. The level of anti-Semitism is definitely growing. It's definitely growing. And I kind of saw it coming. I felt as though that the reality that, and I'm not saying Sparky's anti-Semitic, but it's just when he said that, it just made me think. And that is that I have for a while said I am concerned because Biden, his cabinet is wholly Zionist, a bunch of damn sociopaths, and very, very heavily Jewish. And I just felt as though, looking at how bad Israel is, looking at how horrific his cabinet is, that people will start saying it's about the Jews, and anti-Semitism would grow. Now, I do think that the fact that, Not in My Name, Jewish Voices for Peace, and groups like that have helped to stem the tide of anti-Semitism. But I don't think they've thwarted it. So I think that we will see that, paradoxically, I hate to overuse that word, but what the hell, it works here. Very effective. Paradoxically, Israel will create more anti-Semitism in the world than anything else. And the Biden administration, because of the heavy Zionist and heavy Jewish influence in his cabinet, will create a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot. Bad anti-Semitism. I'm seeing it grow myself. I'm seeing it start to grow around. I'm seeing people angry at the Jews rather than at the Zionists. And they're wrong, but that's the dynamic that I feared, and I think that dynamic is growing. Sparky, fun fact, in 1492, the Ottoman Empire sent ships to save Jews from the Spanish Inquisition. Of course, the people who have been treated Jewish people the best over the course of history are the Muslim countries. Sparky says, 73 oil embargo leading to the energy crisis was due to Israel. Absolutely. Israel's been our worst enemy. Every time anyone says Israel's our only friend in the Middle East, I can't help but think that before Israel, we had no enemies in the Middle East. John Sheehan, yes, that's famous. Oh, yeah, Israel's a disaster for us. It is our power, and it has to be because it's a fascist state. Jura says, Garland, you're the best. You make complex geopolitical matters simple and easy to understand. Neocons and globalists have dug their own graves. That is a fact. Thank you very much. I mean, not to be smart, me being great. I mean, just about the digging their own graves. Denazify Israel. Here, higgity here. How about Sparky? Man, Sparky's hot. Build a better world with BRICS. We love you, Spark. Sparky is all over it, man. Marduk says the arsenal of democracy is a lot more impressive than the arsenal of capitalism. How about that? That's that. Let me look at Rockfin. Boom, boom, boom. And Bob Baker. Thank you very much, Bob Baker. Certainly appreciate that. All right, everybody. Well, I'm tired. So I'm hitting the sack. Do me a favor. Share this on all your social media platforms. I'm beat. You see everything scrolling across. If you can be a Patreon subscriber, certainly highly appreciated. Follow me on Rockfin. Follow me on Telegram. Follow me on Rumble. If you can share this on your social media platforms. If you can't afford to help, buy me a coffee and PayPal, certainly all of that, and my Cash App info. If you can help, that's great. If you can't, no problem whatsoever. Keep all your money for your family. Don't even worry about that, but just share this on all your social media platforms. That's how you can help, because it's all about getting the message out, man. It's all about giving people an opportunity to hear some alternative perspectives. Thanks a lot, everybody. And last night, Sparky says, will the king of Jordan remain in power after defending Israel during the attack on Iran? Yeah, he's got some problems. Let's see how that works out in the long run, especially if you get a wider war. I wouldn't want to, I'll put it like this. I wouldn't want to be his head. I might end up in a basket, if you know what I mean. Thanks a lot, everybody. Peace. I'm out. Eric says, I'm not rich, Garland. There you go, Eric. So do me a favor. You can share this on all your social media platforms. That's all I ask you to do. Wouldn't that be just wonderful? Thank you very much. Garland O would love to get your show on KPFK. Believe it or not, I was on KPFK in Pacifica for 2.5 years, and the general manager I just said, well, we don't want you anymore. Keep in mind something. I think KPFK was KPFA. Was KPFA different from KPFK? I don't know. But anyway, I don't know. But I'm on WPFW 89.3 FM, which is Pacific in Washington, D.C. But the thing about KPFK, and I think I was just too much for him. It came across to me, if I'm really brutally honest, I remember listening to a show. And I remember hearing them, they were trying to raise money, saying, I'm sure there's some progressive Democrats out there that want to do this. And I thought to myself, oh yeah, KPFA is different. And that was, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. And though I am a lefty, no question about it, my version of left is about viewing politics through the lens of economic class. So my version of politics isn't necessarily even about race or anything. It's about all the working class people coming together to understand that we're being screwed by the ruling elite. That's my politics, right? And so therefore, I don't hate conservatives or libertarians. I get along fine with them. I have a different ideological bend, shall we say, but anybody who says, I don't trust the government, the US government and its vassals are out to screw us, they're wrong what they're doing going after Russia, they're wrong what they're doing going after China, they're wrong what they're doing going after Cuba, they're wrong what they're doing going after Venezuela, they're wrong what they're doing going after Israel, they're wrong in all the governments that they've overthrown, they're wrong. That we need to mind our damn business and build our own country and try to give people here build our infrastructure and spend our money on our own people. Anyone who's with that, down with that, I'm good. I don't care, left, right, or center, or whatever you want to call yourself, it's fine. I don't buy. I believe that the whole cultural crap that they're using is lies. They don't care about gay people. They don't care about minorities or women. Those are all lies that they're using. It's not that minority groups don't have interests. Like all group has interest, right? All groups have some level of have various interests, and minority groups have certain interests. My point is, if you think Tony Blinken is flying a Black Lives Matter flag or a multicolored rainbow flag at American embassies because he's concerned about Black people or LGBTQ, you're an idiot. It's a front. He's using these people as human shields so he can have an embassy full of a bunch of CIA agents try to overthrow the damn country. And anybody who understands those things, I don't care what your ideology is. That's reality. That's where I am. And so on KPFK, I think, when I said, no, I do not agree with what's happening in Ukraine, because there was people in there, yes, we've got to stop Putin. I'm like, wait a minute. I said, wait a minute. What would the U.S. do if Russia and China overthrew the government of Mexico and started building bases and pointing missiles towards you? You think the U.S. wouldn't go to war? You're damn right they would. So let's forget Russia, China, or whoever. Let's talk about justice and fairness, right? That's what I'm about, fairness and justice. And the U.S. government is not going to tell me who my enemies are. I'm not going to have Joe Biden tell me I should hate China and Russia. No. My enemies are on Wall Street. My enemies are in Silicon Valley. My enemies are on Capitol Hill. They're not in China. They're not in Russia. They're not in Iran. They're not in Venezuela. And I'm not going to have a bunch of neocons try to convince me to hate people 10,000 miles away when I hate people who are a few miles away, who are the ones that are screwing us all. So people that are down with that, I'm good. That didn't go over big at KPFK. I questioned everything. I talked about the jab. I talked from the perspective of deductive reasoning, nothing else. Deductive reasoning. I didn't say it was good, bad, or indifferent. I talked about it from the perspective of deductive reasoning. They couldn't handle that. No, because there are certain things, if you're a member of a cult, that you have to believe. And I see the two parties as brainwashed cults. And I'm no damn cult member. And I'm not going along with cultish beliefs. There were things that I probably crossed the line on at KPFK to the point where I'm not at KPFK anymore. So thanks a lot. Certainly appreciate it. But I don't know if they'd flip out, when they're anti-Trump. I'm not pro-Trump, but I'm not buying into I gotta hate Trump because Trump is the second coming of evil. No. If Trump was here or not here, don't matter to me. I'm opposed to the empire. I was opposed to what the empire was doing before I even heard a damn thing about Trump running for office. And if Trump stopped running for office, it wouldn't mean anything to me. I'd be opposed to the terrible thing. I'd still say, why the hell can't you spend? Why is it that you got $60 million for infrastructure in the United States, but you want $60 billion for a war in Ukraine? I'd still say that if Trump had never been born. And some people can't handle that kind of stuff. We care less about Trump. All right. Thanks a lot, you all. Once again, if you see everything scrolling across, if you can donate, fine. If you can't, that's great. Save your money for you and your family. Simply share this on all your social media platforms. Thanks a lot, everybody. I'm out.